Hey, real quick, before the show starts, if you could hit that subscribe button down below, it will go a long way to helping out the show so we can keep making college football shows every week, all year round.
Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Dan Rubenstein, welcome back to the show, my friend. We just saw each other a few days ago.
It's true. We had a good time, a good brief time in New York as we, I can try and put any sort of lipstick on, like strategizing for the fall. Strategizing. I don't know. We just stare at walls and basements all day, and it's good to see humans, right? That we either work with or just each other, and it was good to be in New York. It was like summer in New York, which was very nice, so the people were out and about. We ate very well. I think I had 6 different pizzas. You had 5 because I spent a little more time there.
People need to understand what's involved with this. And we don't need to drag it on too long, but we referred to it internally as slices and steps.
Yeah, steps and slices, slices and steps, correct.
And so this basically this is like, I don't know, the 3rd or 4th year running now that we've done something like this. Last year, my feet swelled up like crazy because I didn't have the right shoes on to be walking that much. But this year I came prepared. You came prepared with a new idea that was able to sustain us through the entire process. We definitely got our steps in, like 15,000 steps walking around the city and visiting various pizza places that were on your to-do list.
We ended up doing 25,000 or close to 25,000 the day we were together. I did another, 13 or 14 the next day. You know what? I actually thought we were going to record a show because you told me you had your clip-on microphones.
And then I didn't want to bring it with me. Yeah.
I prepared a show, and I'm looking at my notes app right now on my phone as I hold it up on youtube.com/@solidverbal. Subscribe if you're not already. I wrote down here, next step teams, because we were taking so many steps.
Oh, that would have been we can do that on Thursday.
Listen, next step teams, and then walk before you run, right? Teams. Like last year, Arizona walked, and perhaps Arizona is one of those teams that walked last year, runs this year. And then other teams similarly looking to secure a slice of the pie.
Wow.
It's pretty good,
this
right?
Guy. Why didn't you tell me? You didn't even tell me that you had this.
I don't know. Listen, you did not seem like you were into the idea of recording a show. And then you were like, I didn't even bring my laptop. I'm like, well, I don't even know if we can record a show if Ty's not editing, has the ability to edit and post. And then I wrote down college football as pizza. And I went through deep analogies of it takes time to build flavor and you're layering. You can't go too quickly. And if you do go quickly, you need a lot of that specific experience to know how to go quickly, like Kurt Signetti had last year.
Man, this could have been today's episode.
The balance and care of both college football and pizza making, time and temperature, quality ingredients. The toppings are flash. It's all about the foundation of that dough and crust.
Right.
The cheese may be the thing you see, parentheses, the ball, ? But it's really just the tip of the spear. For about 41 minutes on my American Airlines flight between O'Hare and LaGuardia, I was operating on my notes app.
Cooking with gas.
I was cooking.
Rubenstein. All right. Well, put that somewhere in the vault so that we can come back to it when we need an episode, because Lord knows we've got some time to fill here.
Let's let it
before we start
cold
diving
ferment.
into previews and whatnot. Yeah, let it ferment. Very good. Very good. Always on topic. Hello, welcome back. I am Ty. He is Dan. Hit follow, hit subscribe if you have yet to do so. If you've done those things already because you like the show, please do not hesitate to go on out there and leave us a 5-star rating or a review wherever you can. It doesn't affect the algorithm per se, but it does encourage others that we're not just two stooges. Well, we are two stooges, but
that's true.
That we have a good show talking about college football that might be entertaining to some others out there who are in need of a new college football podcast or just another college football podcast. Dan Rubenstein, what do we got in store for today?
So I first wanted to talk about the Big Ten meetings. We've had SEC meetings going on, different conference meetings. I know the ACC has met. And the Big Ten meetings, the headline story there is Tony Petitti, commissioner of the Big Ten, sat for an extended period of time answering questions and clarifying his and the conference's position as it relates to the postseason for the first time, where it wasn't just like sources say blah, blah, blah. This is direct answers and clarifications. So I'd like to touch on that for a moment, but also because it's still May and we haven't done the ACC.
I still have the sound, by the way. Still have the sound.
I wanted to do a vibe check and do a May CC. Just check it.
Man, you got the pun gun working this week.
I've got the pun. It also, when I say May CC, I'm reminded of a high school friend who had one impression and one impression only, and that was the immortal Macy Gray singing I Try. Do you remember that song?
I do remember that
This guy
song.
was not an impressionist. He was not even goofy. He was not a class clown. But if somebody brought up Macy Gray during this very specific time, it was a lot of like, I try to say goodbye and I choke, I stumble. And it was, honestly, it was a pretty solid impression. And I want to do a May CC vibe check and just check in. This is not an ACC preview. This is merely how do we feel about the ACC as a whole and chunks of the ACC as we are in May, just ahead of, I guess, magazine preview season, post-spring.
I mean, this is late May. They're going to start dropping in June.
We want to check in. That's all we're doing. We're checking in on where the ACC, like what teams may have in common, what schedules may look like, maybe a couple of crucial matchups. That's all.
Well, let's start with the Petitti stuff.
Okay.
As you already mentioned and has been written about nearly everywhere where you get your college football news, Tony Petitti, yes, did do an extended Q&A session. Did you ever see The Truman Show?
Oh my, I've seen The Truman Show probably 11 times. All-timer.
There's a scene in The Truman Show where they get Ed Harris, who's like, in charge of it all.
Mm-hmm.
They get Ed Harris to sit down and talk about what is coming up, what is in store, what they're cooking up, I think, for Jim Carrey, a.k.a. Truman. And the way they portray this interview, they talk it up as if this is a rare glimpse into the minds behind the show. It's clear to you as the viewer that this is not something that happens often, so we should cherish it.
Right.
And it really cracked me up reading through some of the headlines this morning, because the way that The Athletic and ESPN and some other places wrote up this availability, this media availability with Tony Petitti, it had much the same tone. It was like a rare occurrence that they finally get a chance to talk to this guy.
Right.
And at a really critical juncture in this offseason, as we now find ourselves in this odd conversation about whether or not they should expand from 12 all the way up to 24 teams in the college football playoff. What is clear, based on what Tony Petitti has said here, is that his position, seemingly the position of other conferences, basically everyone now outside of the SEC, is that they should go up to 24. If not 24, plan B is basically staying at 12.
Right. And we should be as specific as possible and try to cut through as much of the implication as possible. The SEC's position happens to be the same position as ESPN and Disney, right?
Just a pure coincidence, I'm sure.
The Big Ten's position happens to be in the interest of Fox and Fox Sports. Okay?
I'm going to write this down.
If we are going to, I think, fairly bring into question to what degree ESPN is in bed with the best interest of the SEC during, playoff selection time, we certainly, and I think most fairly, should do the same thing when the Big Ten is taking the position of, well, we need more access for teams. And if it happens to also mean more access for perhaps interested television networks in some of these rights
mention inventory.
Conversations.
I did see included in Petitti's quotes.
Right.
The word inventory came up at least once, maybe a few more times. So yes, there's already some thought around what this means for partners and the business of the college football thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you look at Tony Petitti's specific background in the sports business sphere, it happens to be along the lines of multimedia rights and television. So I think the smartest thing at this point, if you are looking at how the wheels are turning behind the scenes, looking at college football as a Cold War between ESPN and Fox wouldn't be the worst starting point. Right. Whether it's the postseason, whether it's realignment, whatever. That would not be the worst starting point, especially we have a few more years left before renegotiated rights. But this was in Terranea. If you're not familiar, it's a luxury resort in Southern California where I think our friend Stu Mandel pointed out one of the topics was the unsustainable spending. And it's not a Holiday Inn Express along the cliffs of Rolling Hills Estates or whatever, Palos Verdes Estates, whatever it is in Southern California where the Big Ten chose to meet. And I'm reading here from our friend Scott Docterman's column on these meetings. And that's having been talking about the 2014 playoff. The willingness to make a change and consider giving our championship game to get to the right postseason. I think our coaches and our administrators understand that trade-off. We feel very strongly about it, a new structure, he's saying, and we're working really hard with our colleagues and other conferences. Obviously, the way this is structured, we understand that the SEC and the Big Ten have to come to an agreement, and we're working very hard to figure out ways to get to a solution. But inside our league, there is a deep commitment to 24 and the access.
Access, yeah. I saw PJ Fleck was thrilled. Absolutely loves the idea of greater access to the playoff.
Very enthusiastic about it. Said, he's all for jumbo expansion up to like 32 teams.
Let's go to 64. Why not? Put them all in. Do these guys legit think that expanding the field is going to give them some additional air cover with regard to whether or not they get fired if they're underperforming?
Oh, it's a status thing. You're either a playoff team or competing to be in the playoff and maybe just miss the playoff, or you don't. We're talking about teams who have not really been in the playoff conversation in earnest late in the season, if at all. So the idea of access, it's easier to recruit because then you can say like, okay, we're putting players on this big stage here at Minnesota, here at Illinois, or in any conference, any team, whatever, if we're expanding to 24 teams. So if you're looking at it from a coaching perspective, their investment is that it makes their job easier and their job safer, right? Nobody's looking at this through the lens of like, what is a quality competitive situation for the sport of college football? That's not the lens.
I've seen some people mention this online, and it kind of cracks me up. Not because I disagree with what I'm reading, but since they decided they want to go up to 12, and people who listen to the show know I'm on record a million times talking about this, expanding it up to 12, even expanding it up to 16, I was like, the new bar, the new threshold for whether or not a coach is performing is, does he get his team to the playoff? Right? That's it. That's going to be the new thing. And so obviously if you take it up to 24, it's going to be easier to get into the playoffs, but I also think that bar changes. And I think the bar is less about getting into the playoffs, because if you're a top 25 caliber team, you're going to be in. Per Scott and the reporting of others, Ohio State would have been every single year. Ohio State would have been in this thing just based on the way it's set up. The likes of Penn State would have been in at least half of the years. I just think the bar will change now, not just getting to the playoff, but are you winning games in the playoff? Are you actually performing once you get there? Because it is now much easier to qualify in the first place.
Right. And that's something that coaches in other sports face, that it's not just about making the playoff. We've just saw NBA coaches get fired with teams in the playoff. We see that in the NFL. We see that in Major League Baseball, right? That like, yeah, you've gotten us here, but then what have you done since getting us here? And the argument from Tony Petitti is that it actually enhances the regular season.
The argument is that it has tiered incentives.
Yes.
Which means that teams at different levels of the standings would still have something important to play for. And he is trying to make the case that almost nobody would be, quote, safe late in the season.
Right.
I don't know if I really agree with that.
Also,
a couple other things here that I wanted to mention. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, so this is where my brain went initially, right? That Fox has made an enormous investment in the Big Ten. They have their pick of the biggest games week in and week out. They have priority here. It is also a commentary on whether or not Fox is getting a good return on its investment, that they have all these huge regular season games, but they're pushing for much more inventory later on in the season, that you're like, ooh, maybe things aren't going super well for this investment for Fox, that they need more, or they feel, it's a competitive environment. They feel like they're getting pushed around by ESPN, that the sport is viewed as an ESPN sport, with Fox sort of only getting a big conference with a little bit of Big 12 in there. And the SEC, that ESPN, you can understand how it's tough to confuse those two sometimes.
How dare you?
That ESPN, with the bigger flagship morning show before the games start and the bigger personalities and everything that comes with
this is where people drop off.
Yeah?
This is where people are like, all right, you lost me.
Okay.
Are we going to have 12 or are we going to have 24?
Right.
No, because once you start talking about like the media ramifications, I'm not saying you, I'm talking about him in general.
I know, I understand. I'm totally with you. Yeah.
But people just want to watch football.
Right.
All of the machinations behind the scenes and the money and who's got the show and the bigger show and not the bigger show. I don't think people give a damn about that. People just want the season to kind of feel like the season they are used to growing up.
I agree. And it's another one of these situations where the stakeholders who are being interviewed, in this case is the coaches are being interviewed about how they feel. Like, yeah, of course the coaches are for it. Like, I don't understand how that is a worthwhile pursuit, really, to find out how coaches feel about this, even though they are the most famous people, I guess, internally within the sport. That there really is nobody speaking on behalf of the people who watch the games. And I understand that this is a business. I understand that, Tony Petitti is doing what's in the best interest of his conference, and same with, Sankey and the SEC and ESPN, Fox, blah, blah, blah. I just feel like we are in the middle of a wild corporate PR storm, and
love those. Those are great, aren't they?
A wild corporate PR storm, and only Ty Hildenbrandt has the gall to speak up for like what it looks like from the outside. And
well, look, I'm only Ty Hill. I'm not the only one. Like 16, I'd be cool with. I'd be cool with 16. It sounds like the SEC would be cool with 16 too. But as Tony Petitti tells it here in his once in a blue moon press availability, apparently there have been virtually no conversations internally on the Big Ten side about going to 16. It's basically either 24 or 12. There was some initial conversation around, well, if we start at 16, we'd be willing to do that only if there is an understanding that we'll eventually go up to 24, but it seems like that has kind of fallen off a little bit. So a few other details here that I did just want to mention. I have been wondering about this for a while now. What would it look like and how would it affect things like conference championship week? So per his telling of this, seeds 1 through 8 would receive a first round bye. Seeds 1 through 8 would also receive a home game after the bye. Tony Petitti said that the top 2 seeds would receive, quote, the best path all the way through. And as you might expect, finishing in the top 8 would be extremely valuable as a result of this. Seeds 9 through 16 would be obviously trying to climb up into that 1 through 8 range at season's end. Getting into the 8 to 16 range, though, would earn a home game. So the difference between being seed number 16 and seed number 17 could be rather significant. He also adds that this would create a late season incentive beyond simply making the field, i.e. earning that home game.
Right.
And then the third tier will be what I guess we would consider bubble teams. If you're seeded, 17 through 24, you just need to find a way to protect your spot. Petitti said that teams in that range would have to keep improving their resume in the final week. And he's making the argument that because teams could move up because they could lose a home game, because they could gain a home game or fall out or improve their path. Resting their starters in that sense wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense, which I know is one of the other arguments against this sort of expanded field.
Right.
There is a lot to this, okay? Much more so than I think we can get into here, because at this point we're just reacting to an interview that he did. But how that then affects things like championship week, it sounds like there's an openness to kind of reimagine what championship week looks like. He did mention again things like inventory and revenue and how much certain schools and certain conferences could stand to lose as a result of a reimagined championship week. I'm not necessarily going to get into that here, but suffice to say there was a lot of discussion around what this means for the last week of the regular season. And again, we keep seeing the inventory word, which
makes me think that we're seeing a lot of buyer's regret, right? From TV networks saying, like, we've spent all this money and we're not recouping it in a way that we thought we were going to, and we need more of an availability of inventory to try and make this money back. And the competitive notion of more teams having access later in the season. Look, these guys are being very transparent that they're looking for ways to generate a maximum amount of revenue, and talking about what they would lose or gain with conference championships and added games. And it's not great, Ty. You look at where teams are. You look at last year, the year before, you look at teams 17, 21, 23. I can't say that there was a huge appetite from my vantage point to see them take on the number 3 team in the country and see what's what. To take on the number 5 team, to take on the number 1 team. Like, it doesn't seem like people are saying to themselves, okay, great. Now that we're through with rivalry week, let's see what TCU can do against Ohio State.
Right.
Let's get a look at Virginia against Notre Dame. Let's get a look at Oregon. And last year they had to play James Madison, which I think is a terrific thing for James Madison. That was sort of a quirk of the year and the schedule. But let's see Oregon against Houston. That's what we as a college football universe, that's what we're here to see. And so I see a lot of people comparing, including the people that run these conferences, to comparing, a potential 2014 playoff to the postseason in other sports and the access that teams in other sports and Major League Baseball, which is what Tony Petitti referenced, like the percentage of teams who make the postseason. I can't stand when these guys do this. Like, college football isn't baseball. College football isn't the Stanley Cup playoffs. The beauty of college football is that it's college football. And so I just think the overestimation of, like, man, how great would it be if we could see Georgia against 2025 Michigan? You're like, I guess. Also, it means that suddenly this new iteration means the teams who actually earn it, which are, your top 8, 10, 12, whatever, however the many teams are clearly separating themselves from the pack, have to then earn it more than ever before, right? That they're the ones being punished. It's how in the NBA they talk about how the new salary structure actually caps the best players and the best earners, and it rewards the middle class more than the actual players who are at the top of the sport. And I get those vibes a little bit. Like, the big winner is PJ Fleck. Like, so that's what we're shaping our sport to reward. The, like, team that is good enough to go 8-4, 9-3, and thus get an invite into a system that in the however many decades of this sport they never would even come close to sniffing an invite. So this is who we're truly rewarding. Like, okay.
Pat Fitzgerald used Iowa as an example of why they want an expanded field, because they lost close games to the national champion Indiana as well as to Oregon.
Sure.
They lost narrowly at Iowa State and USC. They won 9 games by an average of over 20 points. They beat a 10-win Vanderbilt in the bowl game. Fitzgerald said that Iowa played, quote, playoff-level games, and that nobody would have wanted to face the Hawkeyes in the playoff. I think that's BS, personally.
So,
okay.
But what are we saying with that point then? We're saying, like, this team played close games but couldn't figure out how to win.
I agree with you. I'm saying we can throw this on the pile of other things that gall me about Pat Fitzgerald.
Right.
But I don't buy that.
Right, but they had the opportunity to pull out those close games and earn their way into a playoff. I'm not saying you're arguing otherwise. What I'm saying is then we're just saying Iowa has earned the right to lose more close games to quality teams. That's what we want the sport to be? Like, I don't know. We're so far afield that, like, we feel compelled to reward the horseshoeization. Isn't horseshoes what they say? Close only counts in horseshoe and grenades.
Yep.
Like, they had their shot. They had their chance. They gave it all they had, and they weren't there. They also barely beat a, like, careening Penn State, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just miss me with all of this. Iowa State wasn't all that special last year, and they lost to them. Yeah. I don't know. If you want to go to the playoff, win more games. We like wins.
The email is solidverbal@gmail.com. As always, we'd love to hear from the Verballerhood on this, among many other subjects. Tony Petitti does go on to say he sees no scheduling reason, no logistical reason why they couldn't start this in 2027. The biggest reason why, and this is actually what I wanted to bring up a little earlier, but finally getting to it now, in a very weird sense, this might be the best PR move for the SEC in like a decade.
It's huge the way that we're swinging back and forth. Yeah.
I know. After a decade plus, during the Saban run of things in the SEC, when everyone outside of the SEC hated the SEC, we've now boomeranged back to this point where if you are just hoping that the playoff doesn't go completely off the rails and go up to 24 teams, you're now suddenly squarely in the camp of Greg Sankey, who doesn't seem to want it. He'll probably end up there, but none of this can happen unless there is a handshake agreement or probably something on paper between Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey. And the SEC right now is leaning towards 16, which I think is much more palatable. All right, compared to 24, it's definitely more palatable in my view. I've been a 16 fan for a long time, but I wouldn't want to go beyond that. Weirdly, now I'm finding myself rooting for Greg Sankey. So who the hell knows who we're supposed to root for at this point? I'm sure there will be much more breaking on this over the next weeks and months. For sure, this is going to be a talking point that goes deep into the heart of summer throughout the season. We'll do our best to stay on top of it. I don't know what else to say.
As always, if you want to send a message, I'm saying if, not recommending it, not prescribing it, and certainly not aiding and abetting.
Definitely not aiding and abetting what I believe you're about to say.
If you want to send a message, do your own research on how to illegally pirate and stream these games in the college football playoff, right?
Do your own research. We will not be held liable.
Absolutely not. I am not advocating for this, but if one were to want to send a message to these conferences and these TV networks, figure out ways to protect your computers and devices from malware.
And illicit pop-ups.
Right. And illicit pop-ups. But also, or I mean, you can go to sports bars, I guess. But if you want to watch these at home, I'm not going to tell you not to watch the sport. It's the beautiful sport. It's the best sport. Just poke around the darker corners of the internet. And
you can probably find something out there.
I've heard. I don't know. I've heard.
I don't know, but I'm there are a lot of smart computer people out there.
I hear these whispers, Ty. And so that is an option for how to make sense of and trying to digest what we have in front of us, because that's the way you can speak with your pirated wallet, I guess.
With your pirated. Here's what I want, though. Okay, so I gave out the email address. Everyone knows the email address by now.
Yeah.
I would genuinely be curious, and we're not going to judge people. I'm not going to judge people if they write in and have a competing view on this. Maybe we'll get something from Tony Petitti.
Yeah.
But if you feel like we are wrong here, email in. I would welcome competing viewpoints on this. Maybe we're just trapped in our own nostalgia. I know we have a lot of younger viewers that come online every year that find the show that are enthusiastically part of the Verballerhood. And maybe it hits different based on age, based on when you picked up the sport. I don't know. I'm just saying, solidverbal@gmail.com. Write in, let us know if you feel differently. As always, you can leave a comment out on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you can leave comments. We read all those things, even if we don't reply. Marketplace of ideas here, Dan.
Marketplace of ideas.
Yeah.
If you can somehow get this game illegally over the air on, what was the old, like, plate, like a Game Gear? You could get, like, over the air stuff. I don't know.
I mean, I may have dabbled with, like, a hacked Fire Stick back in the day.
Oh my God, Ty.
Certainly there were no shortage of weird streams that were out there, most of which have now been shut down by the federal government.
Right.
What else? It was a bit jarring to maybe have gone to one of those sites and see the emblem of the Homeland Security Department. Like,
yep.
Okay.
We've all been there, Ty.
There may be still some ways that you can, worm around this man-made prison of network television.
You love going to URLs that end in letters where you're like, is that Cameroon? It's like, where is this broadcast exactly originating from? It's
.tz? Okay.
Yeah, we got like, is BG Bangladesh? I always appreciate those, and have watched many a sporting event via that way in my younger days, and that is all behind me. But again, do your own research.
Do your own research. All right. Do you want to do some ACC vibes?
Yes, absolutely.
It's gonna be May.
It is still May. It's not gonna be May. We did an episode last week called Big Ten Vibe Check.
Yeah.
And we said things that may happen.
Yeah.
And I played that sound like 15 times. This is now the ACC. We have gotten a really good response to that show. People want us to talk about other conferences. We did do a vibe check on the Big 12 with a friend, John Kurtz. We did do an SEC vibe check with a good friend, Cole Kubelik. We did the Big 10 one on our own. We got a great response to it. We decided, what the hell, we'll just do ACC on our own as well.
Right.
You came up with, because the pun gun is locked and loaded, May CC.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's going to take on the shape of the episode that we did last week for the Big 10. But maybe you got some topics to throw out with regard to the 17 odd teams in the ACC.
So my first one is more big picture, and that's the ACC may be a still standing mall with an extremely vibrant Chili's, and then just nothing but Lady Foot Lockers sitting empty the rest of the way. Love a vibrant Chili's, Ty. I've spent many, many a night in a vibrant Chili's. I'm, of course, talking about the Miami Hurricanes as a vibrant Chili's. You look at how these teams are or aren't built. You look at the various questions that so many of these teams have, and it's almost copy-paste. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of offensive line questions. There's no concept of who is actually going to step up or if anybody's going to step up along the offensive line. But if people happen to step up on the offensive line, they could be interesting. Those are all of the Lady Foot Lockers of the ACC, it seems. Take your pick with Boston College, Clemson, Duke, Florida State, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, NC State, Pitt, SMU, Syracuse. All of these teams may have catastrophic offensive line situations ahead, which makes it nearly impossible to know which Lady Foot Locker has like the Sabrina ones in stock. Right. No clue.
I'm looking at a quote here as you mentioned Chili's.
Yeah.
I'm getting geared up for the World Cup.
Of course.
Our starting center back who just twisted his ankle, I think will be okay, Chris Richards.
Talking about U.S. team? Yeah.
U.S. team, yeah. Did an interview towards the latter side of March talking about how Chili's is what makes us American.
Okay.
Quote, "This is beautiful. This is nostalgia. This is really America. I think that's one of those things that makes us American. Places like Chili's are a staple. I think they finally could have that stamp on their passport now that they've had Chili's, and I was happy for them." I think he's referring to some of his international comrades.
Got it.
Who have gone to Chili's when they came here. So be careful what you say. Not a sponsor, could be.
Right.
I'm assuming in this case you're talking about Miami as the Chili's,
I am.
the Vibrant Chili's.
The Vibrant Chili's at the end of the mall that is drawing people there. And again, I don't know this is a terrible thing for the ACC. It is a nice thing if you talk about access and you talk about a conference that had a Duke-Virginia conference championship game last season. Two teams who were clearly not the best two teams in the conference last year, or at least both of them were not in the top two. I think there is a chance that this could make this more entertaining. I think this is a chance that it could inflate a lot of these defenses that we have in front of us. The other connective tissue I saw was outside of Miami. This may be a conference fully devoid of a complete and interesting receiver room. Right? You look around this conference, they're like, okay, they have this one guy. They have Deuce Robinson.
The key is complete. Yeah.
Right.
Because Deuce Robinson's a legit wide receiver one.
Totally.
He's very good. But a complete receiver room is, that's
like, they got three interesting dudes. Or they have two interesting dudes and an interesting tight end. The only other one outside of Miami, I think, is Cal. I think Cal's receiver room is actually good to very good, potentially, with the addition of the transfers that they added. But when you look across this conference, like NC State lost a bunch of dudes who started growing into something interesting last year. CJ Bailey put up good numbers last year for the most part. Maybe not in the toughest games that NC State played in, but now they're relying on Miami backups. NC State is. There's a lot of Miami backups to be had. Obviously, they're a team that, when you have that kind of success, you're not going to be able to keep all of your backups and pay them a ton of money. But if you're looking at connective tissues and what this conference may be, it may be a conference that has a lot of chaotic scramble energy all season long.
There's a lot of turnover too.
Right.
There's a lot of turnover across the conference. And I think, bigger picture, if you're trying to do a vibe check, the analogy to the mall with the Vibrant Chili's is about as good as you're going to get.
Yes.
I would just say it's Miami and then a big old shrug for me.
Yeah.
We've been looking at preview content now for a couple weeks, and it's not clear to me who is in that next tier and what the line is between tier 2 and tier 3. It feels very, very blurred. And I can make a case for a lot of these teams to be kind of in that next tier down. But Miami, I think, stands alone.
Yeah.
And then it's a huge, it's a big shrug for me, honestly. I could talk myself into some teams and just as easily talk myself out of somebody like a Clemson or a Louisville or an SMU or even a Virginia Tech. So I think that makes for an interesting season. It certainly does not do us any favors in our nearly 20-year pursuit of asking ourselves 6 weeks into the season, hey, did Wake Forest play NC State yet?
Right.
Where every team kind of feels the same and every team has pretty deep flaws. That tends to feel like there's a lot of parity in the conference, which could make for some interesting results. But beyond that, it's very unclear to me who besides Miami steps up to kind of a challenge.
Oh, I'm all in on the wild card nature, and this is another May I have. I don't know if you want to play the sound.
It's gonna be May.
The Cal Bears may win 5 games or 10 games.
Yeah.
I have down here for Cal, high upside quarterback, complete unknown at head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator. They brought in younger, recent NFL guys who I think were both at Oregon as analysts, maybe some USC ties there as well. High-end offensive transfers. The schedule ending, they have 3 straight road games with a bye in there before the Stanford game. Basically, nonstop decent quality on this schedule, perhaps other than Stanford and UCLA, but we don't know. We'll see. We're, both of us are somewhat high on UCLA, relatively speaking. They have an extreme home field travel advantage, an extreme road disadvantage. I think the spectrum of outcomes for Cal may be the most interesting spectrum in the conference.
The run game last year was awful. They got to rebuild
and their defense
that.
was underrated. There's all these sort of extremes. Yeah.
The defense was underrated, but they lost a bunch of their better tacklers.
Totally.
They've got 2 first-time coordinators, which will be, interesting to chart as we get into this thing. But they combat that with a coach in Tosh Lupoi who got him, the number 14 portal class? I mean, he was aggressive. He's known as being a dogged recruiter.
Yeah.
He was very aggressive in bringing in talent. I've already spoken at length here on this show about Adam Muhammad, the running back they bring down from Washington.
Yeah.
I think he could be a force on this offense, especially if they are able to rebuild that ground game the way I think they do. He got rave reviews so far this spring and definitely is one of these guys to watch their stock the deeper we get into the year. And also JKS, their quarterback, year one was really optimistic. It seemed as though the plan was to have him throw through whatever kind of challenges they were dealing with, not necessarily run through it because they couldn't. And so if they are able to provide a little bit more balance, that makes them a really interesting team to watch.
Sure.
And I'm with you. I like Cal a lot. It's just there is so much new and so much changing that trying to lock in on like an 8-4 or a 7-5 or a 9-3, it's going to be impossible when we do previews, which again, this is not a preview. It's going to be impossible to really zero in on a good 2 or 3 game range for the Cal Golden Bears because it feels like there's a lot here that is just a huge unknown.
This may be the conference with again, I'm going to try to be diplomatic and be kind here. The power conference with the most unusual and potentially disappointing roster of quarterbacks. So we're talking about quarterbacks who have landed in the ACC after not working out elsewhere. Right? We're not talking about the typical power conference situations in which quarterbacks are ascending to this new conference, that we are seeing guys come in because they thrived at a smaller place or thrived somewhere else and are here to show it off on perhaps a bigger or more interesting stage or an offense that's better fit for them. You're talking about like a guy who couldn't start at Notre Dame, a guy who lost his job at Mizzou. You're talking about...
I'll go through it.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so Miami's got Darian Mensah. You mentioned CJ Bailey.
He is ascending. Yeah.
Right. These are guys that I think we can count on. We have base level competence. Pitt's got Mason Heinschel, who came on, Cal, JKS.
Yeah.
But everybody else, all right. So Christopher Vizina at Clemson, Lincoln Keenholz at Louisville, neither of which has any real experience to lean back on.
And Keenholz didn't win a job at a bigger
Didn't
place.
win a job at Ohio State. Ethan Grunkemeyer at Virginia Tech, have much more of a sample size for him. He took over after Aller got hurt.
But was looked at as backup quality at Penn State.
Was looked up as backup quality. Ashton Daniels, who is going to be QB1 at Florida State this year. Okay.
Auburn backup.
Yeah. It's going to be Bo Pribula or Eli Holstein at Virginia.
Yep.
Okay.
Both of whom are not going to start at bigger places, arguably. Yeah.
Alberto Mendoza, who transferred because he probably wasn't going to get the nod over Josh Hoover.
Showed promise in limited time.
Yeah, but they like Alberto Mendoza with what they've seen so far at Georgia Tech. I mean, another one of these guys who I think is on big time stock watch. But again, okay, it's going to be new. We've got Gio Lopez now transferring away from UNC down to Wake to rejoin his former offensive coordinator at South Alabama, Robbie Zell.
Was benched at North Carolina.
Benched in North Carolina.
Yep. A bad North Carolina offense from last season, to be clear.
Correct. We've got Walker Eget at Duke.
Yeah, who is scrambling after losing Darian Mensah late. Yeah.
We've got Davis Warren still playing at Stanford.
Former
transfers
Michigan.
From Michigan.
Quick
Mason
starter,
McKenzie,
but third string. Yeah, D2.
Mason McKenzie from Saginaw State at Boston College. Dual threat guy. Could be good. And then, Steve Angeli, who in a very limited sample size was solid for Syracuse and was very solid for Notre Dame in even more of a limited sample size, but is recovering from a pretty serious injury.
Right.
So they need him to be healthy. So yeah, there's a lot there where if you can just have like decent quarterback play, that could be enough to kind of get you into that second tier.
Did we mention Kevin Jennings?
Oh, I didn't even mention Kevin Jennings. Kevin Jennings
Legit
is
very
definitely
good. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely very, very good. Turns the ball over too much. You know, there's a little bit of I'm sure they would prefer that, not as many turnovers, but the talent is undeniable.
Yeah. I guess my broader point is going into a season with that much at quarterback seemingly going in the wrong direction has too much of like a G5, G6 vibe for me. Like there's a little bit too much Mountain West East, Mountain East. That would be a mean thing to call the ACC. But if you do call it that, please give us the credit. That's the disappointing thing and potentially thrilling thing about the ACC. That there is the like, yeah, Bo Perbula might not be great, but between weeks 3 and 5, he was super fun.
Yeah. And that might be enough. That might be enough.
Right.
Based on the way this conference is shaken out. Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing I have down here, because I don't want it to be all bad or all terrific or all whatever.
Hold on.
Okay.
Okay. Continue.
I think that there is going to be a surprisingly great team who's not at all great in this conference because of just one of the Lady Footlockers is going to emerge. I think one of the quietest, most interesting hires of the ACC offseason is it Vince Karras? Karras.
Yeah, Syracuse?
At Syracuse.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to be on the level of like Danny Gonzalez last year at Arizona, where they find players, they hit the portal hard. There is something to me about hiring somebody who has that much success consistently and coming off of a year that Syracuse had where obviously changes needed to be made after how much they lost after Steve Angeli went down, that I may be overly hopeful for the initial run of success that this defense could have. Barely English. But those are the types of stories that always break through to me. That like they found a guy who can figure out what to do with what they have. And because, as we mentioned, the roster of quarterbacks in this conference isn't incredible, that somebody, somewhere, is going to figure out how to get a bunch of pop-outs and ground balls. And because of how entertaining Syracuse can be, that's something that may be of interest to me.
I don't think it's an easy schedule for Syracuse.
It's not an easy schedule.
Especially the second half of the season when they've got, I guess even a little bit before that, a home game against Louisville. And then they're at North Carolina, home against SMU, home against Clemson, on the road at NC State, on the road at Boston College, and they close out the year home against Notre Dame. That's a really tough back half of their schedule. I guess those were the final 7 games of the year. But the Syracuse story is interesting for me because of defense. And there is a lot of returning production on defense.
Yeah.
There is. There's a ton back, and Vince Karras is a meaningful defensive reset at a school that needs it. He comes from Toledo, the old Mount Union stock before, most recently of Toledo for the last 5 seasons or so. A really good defensive coordinator. And so if they could get him in there, he's not a blitz heavy guy. He's not going to go crazy blitzing the farm.
Right.
But I think he will meaningfully provide a change of scenery for this defense. What I keep coming back to, though, are 2 things. First, on the point of the defense, is returning production good when the defense was this bad a year ago?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Right, and we talked about this a week ago. That's the first thing. Secondly, so much of this feels like it pivots on whether or not Steve Angeli is healthy.
Right.
Because the 4-game sample was great. I thought he was really good. But he's coming off an Achilles injury. He's got to be healthy. And this is a receiver room that lost a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So what does this look like now? I mean, is having a good enough defense or a better defense against the quarterbacks that you mentioned an effective enough ethos to put Syracuse into a more interesting spot? I don't know, but I still like the coaching staff. I still like Steve Angeli, and I do like the Vince Karras hire as well.
Yeah,
That's
and you can
coordinator.
get better via the portal up front on defense. There are enough defensive linemen out there, especially for a place like Syracuse if they're looking at lower levels or whatever. I think they have at least a couple headliners, or at least one headliner coming up from somewhere. Right. I want to say, I don't have it in front of me, but there is something about, there's zero pressure on this defense. Obviously, there's pressure on the coaching staff, but there's zero pressure to perform on a high level for this defense in this moment. You have quarterback health, and this is a conference. If nothing else, if you do something really well and you do the other side of the ball okay, maybe even below average, can win 8-9 games. Like Georgia Tech didn't have a defense last year and started 8-0. Right? Wake Forest didn't have an offense and won 9 games?
No.
So if you're going to look somewhere that could do something interesting coming from a space from last year that was disastrous, I don't know. Syracuse is at least a candidate to me.
I mean, the worst team on this outside of New Hampshire, which is an FCS team.
Yeah.
And Boston College, which is the second to last week of the year.
Sure.
Per Bill Connolly's SP+, the worst team on this is UConn. And I know UConn's had some turnover, but UConn's had a pretty good team as of late.
Well, they lost their coach, but yes.
Lost their coach, I get that. But, they're trying, right? They're trying. Yeah. They hired Jason Campbell. He brought in 40 or more transfers. So I don't think UConn's going to totally bottom out. And then the next step down per SP+ is Cal, which could be a pretty good team. We just talked about Cal, maybe winning 10 games. So my point is this: Syracuse is a tough schedule. They obviously have some issues. Steve Angeli's got to be healthy. Needs to have guys that can establish themselves as being worthy pass catchers out wide. And defensively, what can Vince Karras spin up? With Toledo, coming from Toledo, where you led one of the best defenses in the country a year ago. We'll see.
I'm just telling you, there's also like weird, like if the ACC were looking to do some of the worst teams on the 2025 league some favors, Syracuse's sandwichy and letdowny look ahead spots, especially with a weird home field advantage, is that it's a different type of environment. I'm saying the schedule actually does do them some favors, and that's, I don't know, not nothing for a team that needs favors.
What else do we got here, Dan?
Georgia Tech may be due for a big drop. If there's some stock I'm willing to sell right now, it might be in Georgia Tech, and that is with saying I believe Brent Key has done a terrific job there. All things considered, from where that program was. But the change in coordinator on offense specifically, that they were able to win the close games that they won last season before sort of limping to the finish line, losing the guy who was bringing the offense across the finish line as much as he could in Haynes King, giving everything he had, losing Buster Faulkner, losing the backup quarterback most familiar with that system. Obviously, Buster Faulkner's not there anymore, so it matters less. Counting on an external quarterback transfer in Alberto Mendoza, who might be terrific, might be amazing.
They loved him in spring.
But they bring in Alberto Mendoza, and then the word is that, like, they're really leaning into the run. Also, you have to give the offensive line a benefit of the doubt. It's going to be a new-look offensive line somewhat because of what they've been able to do thus far during Brent Key's time there. But if we're talking about offensive scheme uncertainty, quarterback uncertainty at a new place, and not a ton of dependable pieces on defense, and the universe kind of evening itself out if you're able to sneak by a bunch of times in close games the year before, I think I want to say the win total over-under is something like 6.5.
Okay. Yeah.
And you get Georgia every year. I don't know. If I were looking at a team to take like a chunky fall from last year, it might be Georgia Tech.
So the new coordinator is George Godsey.
Yeah, coming back.
Yep, coming back. George Godsey was most recently a tight ends coach with the Ravens. Before that, a tight ends coach with the Dolphins. Before that, a quarterback coach with the Lions, was with the Texans, was with the Patriots, was with UCF way back in the day.
Yeah.
But did play quarterback at Georgia Tech in the late 90s.
Yeah.
If you read up at all about what this offense looks like, it's a lot of what you were describing, right? It's more pro style. It's more run first. There's more under center stuff, play action, heavier tight end sets, things of that nature. It probably is a bit of a departure from what we saw a year ago with Haynes King, who was very much the engine for this whole thing. They built the whole offense around him when he was out there. It always gave him a chance. When he wasn't, it was a different story. Even though Aaron Philo was decent in limited action, it was all about Haynes King and what he could do. So right. I think I am with you from the standpoint of anytime there is this much new, it is a cause for pause or favorite pet charity.
Yes.
When you lose Haynes King, when you lose the offensive coordinator, that's a lot walking out the door. I should also add that it's a thin receiver room.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that the offensive line is being rebuilt.
Buddy, it's everywhere in this conference pretty much. Rebuilt offensive line, thin and questionable receiver room.
Yep. Now, it's also a secondary that profiles as being very man-heavy, which may not necessarily be a bad thing, given the receiver rooms around the conference, which you described rightfully earlier as being rather incomplete.
Yeah.
But you gotta be able to cover the pass. And we've seen Georgia Tech have some trouble with that as of late. So what does that defense look like? They're going to try and we hear this all the time. It will be a much more aggressive attacking defense. They're going to try and bring pressure and get takeaways. That's going to be their new defensive identity now. So whatever. I think it's entirely possible without Haynes King that we see a bit of a drop off. And I hate to pin it all on one guy.
Right.
But I'm looking at the schedule right now, and this is not another one. Again, there's a lot of parity in this conference. But they get Tennessee week 2. They're on the road at Virginia Tech, on the road at Pitt, on the road at Clemson, on the road at Georgia to close out the year. Those are a bunch of tough games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not it. I mean, they go on a stretch here where they're at Pitt, home against Louisville, at Clemson, a weird sandwich game at home against Wake Forest, who's probably going to be frisky again, before they've got the clean old-fashioned hate game to close out the year.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible. I think it's very, very possible. I think we tend to give Brent Key benefit of the doubt because, as you said, he has done a good job there. But you don't have to squint too hard to see a drop coming.
Louisville may be the more realistic. They're not great, but I just woke up and saw that they're 9-2 type team.
I love Louisville this year.
Now, again, offensive line and receiver. And in addition, a quarterback who hasn't played any meaningful time, potential superstar running back. There's a lot to like about, where Louisville's defense has been recently. I don't believe they play Miami. I think their schedule
They miss Miami, Clemson, and Virginia Tech, which I think is nice. It's a very friendly schedule.
So it is a 9 or 10 win schedule if they are actually good. Maybe not great. Like this, it feels like a year that's more on Jeff Brom not losing a dumb game or two than ever before. Again, we don't know what Lincoln Kienholz is. We don't, there are definite holes on this roster. But when you look at what's new on the roster, like they're likely going to lose game 1 against Ole Miss, but Villanova, the home road splits are great. SMU at home, Wake at home, an NC State team with a ton of questions on the road after that. Florida State on short rest, but it's at home. They're on the road at Syracuse, who has, again, I think decently high variance. They get Stanford flying across the country to play them. I'm at least initially down on Georgia Tech. I've got a lot of questions about like Billy Edwards, North Carolina on the road. We'll see if Pitt can finish better than they did last year, and they get a year 1 Kentucky head coach after just demolishing them last season to finish out the season. So this should be a year for Louisville to quietly win a ton of games.
I think so.
Or it may be a year. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, Isaac Brown and Kewan Brown.
Yeah.
in the backfield can carry the offense. Now, it is offensive line dependent.
Sure.
But having those guys, especially when you've got, I think, some uncertainty at quarterback, even if you know who your guy is going to be. We just don't have a sample for Lincoln Kienholz. But we do for those running backs. And so if they can get the line up to snuff, and if they can run the ball effectively and play good defense, it's probably like a top 25 caliber defense, a pretty good defense.
Yeah.
At least it profiles that way on paper. So that's not a bad formula against this conference, against this schedule, where to the point, I think Louisville could go on a little bit of a run here where, yeah, you wake up in early November, you're like, wait, what are they?
Yeah.
They're number 12 in the country.
Yes.
They're 9-1.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a very positive one here.
It's gonna be me.
Can't set me up like that. You got to give me a chance to play it.
Excuse me. Miami Notre Dame may be the most Heisman propelling / eliminating game for quarterbacks in the race on November 7th, a day that includes Dante Moore against Julius
It's a
Sayin.
huge day of college football.
Well, just think about the quarterback matchups.
I know.
November heading into the meat of the end of the season. So it's Dante Moore, Julius Sayin, Sam Levitt against, we think, Keelan Russell, but maybe Austin Mack, Trinidad Chambliss against Gunnar Stockton, Marcel Reed against Lenoris Sellers. Even, like, if you want to go down the list a little, just in terms of, like, maybe one of these guys shoots up the rankings, Avery Johnson, Drew Mestemaker, Bear Bachmeier, Devin Dampier. I'm not saying all of those dudes. I'm saying pick and choose, but because of Miami's schedule and because of Notre Dame's schedule, it feels like that last real opportunity to make a statement if both CJ Carr and Darian Mensah are excellent up to that point.
That's going to be the statement game for CJ Carr. It's going to have to be. I mean, they are on the road before that against BYU, which would be a big game in its own right.
Yeah.
But the home game against Miami, especially after the way things went down a year ago, was his first start on the road in Miami. They lost that game by 3 points. Miami goes on to make a run at the national title. So there's a bit of a revenge aspect there that I'm sure will be played up. It is going to be a primetime game. I'm not sure how many primetime games there will be that week, but unfortunately, they're probably all going to be at the same time and drive us crazy.
Right.
I think there's a high probability that, at least for those two teams that you mentioned, Miami looking to win an ACC, Notre Dame, I guess, dabbling with the ACC, we can put it. Both of those teams are going to have quarterbacks that are very much in that conversation.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a meaningful game for both of them with regard to the playoff. Certainly for Notre Dame, they got to win that one. They have to win that one, I think, to get the revenge that they seek going into this season.
Well,
that's
it's
sort
also
of like the game.
It's selling the program. It's selling Notre Dame because of their schedule, that there's just not those opportunities. And it honestly, it's not terribly dissimilar from Darian Mensah in Miami, who, if you were looking at a value pick for the Heisman, I am a non-wagerer, but Darian Mensah, who basically the final chapter, the final gap that he needs to fill, like, he just didn't finish the season all that well, wasn't great against the best teams on Duke's schedule, but this is going to be, I think he'll get better coaching and he'll have better receivers, but also a similar receiver, and going from Cooper Barkate to Cooper Barkate this year. But having a Heisman caliber receiver to throw to in Malachi Toney, having Mark Fletcher in the backfield, having his own defense to lean on and depend on, because Miami's defense should be that good, that Darian Mensah, I think more than a lot of these guys, could just put up cartoonish numbers. You look at the Ohio State guys could split the vote, and Julius Sayin and Jeremiah Smith. CJ Carr just won't have the opportunities. Darian Mensah won't have the opportunities as well. But I think Mensah might be a little bit more advantaged than CJ Carr with what he has around him. So he might be the value pick. I don't know whether he's like 6th or 7th or whatever in the odds right now, Mensah is. But I think that game with those implications is, in that specific way, more interesting than those other quarterback matchups.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And if I could zoom out a little bit, I mean, the Miami story this year will be, I think, just absolutely fascinating because of what they lose. Right. Because of losing Carson Beck. Love him or hate him, Carson Beck had a lot of experience. You've got big time stars on both lines that are now off to the NFL. Obviously the circumstance that brought Mensah to Miami was a bit weird, to say the least, coming down from Duke. But even despite the turnover, Miami on defense projects to be one of the best defenses in the country, in my view. They're still going to be really, really good. Mm-hmm. Still have Malachi Tony. So despite the fact that there is a lot changing, there is still a lot there that I think it should leave you feeling encouraged, which is part of why they're the Chili's in this conversation. Everyone else is the Lady Foot Locker. But how it shakes out for the Canes before that Notre Dame game, will there be a situation again where they drop a dumb one? You know, because we've seen that. This is not something that they've been able to fully kick. They've got Clemson on the road. They've got a home game against Florida State. Those seem to be, at least for my money, the two biggest ones before that Notre Dame game, unless you're counting a home game against Pitt, which I'm not. But outside of that Notre Dame game, home against Duke, home against Virginia Tech, home against Boston College, those should be 3 wins for Miami. So it really does build to that game on November 7th in Week 10.
Yeah, which does not affect their standings. Their standing in the ACC.
Does not affect their standing in the ACC, but I think more nationally.
Yes, of course.
In terms of where they're ranked and all that, that will be a very pivotal game for both teams, not just
this is also
one or the other.
Just as it relates to Miami, because of, look, the change on the offensive line, they should be fine there. And the change on the defensive line, especially at edge, bringing in Damon Wilson, they should be fine there. Different guys will step up. Different rotational dudes will have more time. This is the first year, and I'm not even saying this is a bad thing. I think this is potentially a really good thing to have them like locked in and focused. But this is the first time since Mario Cristobal arrived where they are the only team considered to be elite and atop the conference, right? In previous seasons, it's like, okay, Florida State's going to be good again. They went 13-0 last year. Or Clemson made the playoff last year. Maybe it's Clemson and Miami, but it's Clemson being looked at with what they returned last year heading into the season. I was like, well, all signed, like you had them, you know, everybody had them in like their top 5 or their top 7 or something. And that didn't work out for Clemson. But this is the first season which it's just a Vibrant Chili's at the mall. There's no Texas Roadhouse. There's no Red Lobster. There's no California Pizza Kitchen. There is just the sizzling fajitas and baby back ribs that are aligned with Miami's hopes and dreams.
You ever have like Chili's does like a grilled corn on the cob thing? You ever have that?
It's on the cob. It's not like in a bowl or a cup.
It's on the cob, but it's super tender. It's like one of the best things I've ever had in my life.
Is there like a seasoning on there that's especially good?
I mean, I think you can. I don't know. I don't.
Of course you
I don't
can.
think mine did. I'm going backwards.
So Chili's corn on the cob, in your recollection,
so good,
top tier.
Yeah, it could have been. It could have just been that moment in my life,
sure,
where that was the best thing ever. But I aspire to grill my corn on the cob in the same way.
Okay, we usually did. I went a good amount of times in college, and we usually did burgers. For the most part, I think we did burgers at Chili's, and I think we were all pretty satisfied with them.
Flip on over to Virginia Tech.
Okay.
I know you've been listing these out.
Yeah. Do you have a May for Virginia Tech?
I want you to look at Virginia Tech's schedule, and I want you to answer the question, scale of like, I don't know, 0 to 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Certainty that Virginia Tech makes the college football playoff.
Certainty?
Confidence. How confident would you be if I presented that ridiculous proposition to you?
So in how many simulations of the 2026 season does Virginia Tech with this schedule?
What percentage of the time do they make the college football playoff? Look at this guy. I want you to look at the schedule.
Okay. They realistically could start 4-0 in September.
Yep.
VMI, ODU, Maryland in September's tough, Ty. That's on the road.
I know.
September, Maryland. Got to handle that pass rush. Boston College on the road. So not unthinkable that they start out the season going 4-0. They host Pitt short week on a Friday night. and they travel to Cal. So I say best case scenario, they're probably 5-1.
Okay.
They're splitting those games. So best possible scenario, I don't think they're starting 6-0. And then they finish out their season in a difficult manner. So Georgia Tech at Clemson, at SMU, Stanford at home. So that's Stanford traveling across the country, at Miami, and hosting Virginia. A few seconds away from winning the conference
How many
last year.
simulations? How many simulations did they make the playoff?
So you're talking. You probably have to go 10-2.
Yep.
Because Virginia Tech has a non-conference schedule that's not terribly impressive. So they're not going to get any sort of benefit of the doubt at 9-3. So a 10-2 Virginia Tech means they drop and are impressive. They're dropping at Miami and then probably one of at Clemson, at SMU, or maybe Pitt or at Cal.
Okay.
So two of those. It means Grunk is probably really good, B+, A-. They find answers at receiver. It is increasingly clear that Brent Pry is a defensive coordinator and not much else. Out of 100 simulations, I think they make the college football playoff 8 times.
8%. Wow. Okay.
What do you say?
I mean, the reason I asked that is because we've been talking about the ACC being an abandoned mall with a vibrant Chili's.
Yeah.
And in the land of lady footlockers, the one that sells a couple shoes is king, or I guess in this case, queen. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work with this.
The Sabrina ones.
But you get my point here, right?
Yeah.
You get my point. If Virginia Tech can somehow find a way to bubble up, we don't really know what to make of Virginia Tech. I think we've got ample data on James Franklin, and we know that especially now in this era of everybody transferring over, you can reboot a program pretty quickly. So I think Virginia Tech would be pretty good. The question is how good, and the question is to what end does that transplant effort actually work? Which is the question about a bunch of places around college football, including his old school, Penn State.
Yeah.
We're going to have that same conversation. We did have that same conversation. But if I'm looking at this schedule, and if we genuinely feel like outside of Miami, who is on this schedule late, but outside of Miami, there's just a bunch of teams that kind of feel the same, and they don't really separate from the pack for one reason or another, is there not a case to be made for Virginia Tech having a bunch of guys, which technically, if you do the returning production calculation, they've got a lot of returning production. They've got guys on this team who have played a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
So I think it stands to reason that number should be higher than 8%. I'm not saying 25%.
Okay.
But I think with this schedule and with the uncertainty around the conference, give them 15. I'll double that number.
Okay. Look,
I don't think it's completely beyond the realm of possibilities.
They were 20 points worse than ODU last year.
I know.
So we got to solve that first. We got to solve the Monarchs.
I'm not predicting this will happen.
No, I know.
But theater of the mind here on the show, as we are in late May.
Mm-hmm.
Just wondering your thoughts.
I think even putting them in that simulated conversation is an insane tactic on your part.
Okay.
But I also dig it. I think it's intriguing. It's arresting.
Yeah.
I think they will be, by the end of the year, thrilled to be in that 6-7 win range.
Let me ask you another question, Dan.
Please.
Let's stick with the mall thing here.
Okay.
Is there a surprise Orange Julius in this crop of other 16 teams?
I think there will be a pop-up Orange Julius. I think there will be a week 9, maybe a week 9 and 10 Orange Julius.
Like if you are picking from the rest of this pack,
yeah,
perhaps a surprise team that pops up and gets a lot of love.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a team that your mind goes to first? Outside of Cal, I know you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. By the way, can we call it the Chili's Conference? ACC?
Sure. A Chili's conference?
Yeah. Chili's. Okay. Yeah.
Chili's.
Not many. Yeah. Is there a team that has the ability to have a magic couple weeks?
Because I look at this, all right, I'll answer first.
Okay.
I'll just go rapid fire through. Boston College, no chance. They've got Ted Roof. I'm out.
Yeah.
Cal, we already described. Clemson, if Clemson were to bubble up, I don't think it would be a huge surprise. So I don't even count them as part of this. Maybe with Christopher Vizina and his 71 pass attempts, that would be a bit of a surprise. But
yeah,
Clemson's been so good for so long that we can't realistically put them as part of this conversation.
Right.
Duke, no chance. Florida State bubbling up would be something, but Florida State's, I think, more of a traditional power. So even if they got good, to me, it wouldn't be a huge surprise.
Right.
Georgia Tech, I don't see it. Louisville, I can make the case, but again, they've been pretty good. NC State, North Carolina, no way. Pitt, I don't see it. SMU made the playoffs 2 years ago. Stanford, I don't see it. Syracuse, maybe you like Syracuse. Maybe Virginia runs it back. Virginia Tech, Wake Forest. I think my point in bringing this up is I am struggling to figure out who that team is.
Right.
I could definitely make a case for a team going on a run like week 8 through week 10. But in terms of a team genuinely going out there and surprising us the full season through and having a magical 10-2 season, much the way you described with Cal,
right?
I'm struggling to find other teams that maybe could fit that mold.
It might be NC State, is what I would say. So the Virginia game is not at Virginia, right?
Right.
Where are they playing that game?
Yeah,
that's a neutral site game.
Yeah, the Virginia game is in Rio.
Yes.
To open up the year.
So that's weird.
0.
Either one of those teams can win it, and it'll be a win if nobody's brother gets in a fight in the parking lot, right?
That's right.
So that's a win, and it's in and of itself. They get a kind of retooled Vanderbilt, Richmond, App State. They get Louisville and Wake at home. So the first half of their schedule is weird, if not kind of good.
Oh, this is a great schedule. You're right.
Stanford is on the road, and it's short week, but not short week because it's after a bye. They get Cal coming across the country. They get a Duke team that might be decently down. They get a Syracuse team that likely still has a ways to go.
They're on the road at Florida State, second to last week of the year, who may not be with Mike Norvell at that point, depending on how things go.
Yeah, I will see. But Florida State has a ways to go, I think, themselves in terms of where they see themselves as a program.
Yes.
And then they have North Carolina to finish out the year in the rivalry spot, and that's a week after North Carolina travels to Virginia. So,
no Miami, SMU, Clemson, Pitt, Virginia Tech, or Georgia Tech.
Right.
On this thing. That's really good. Wow.
And look,
I missed that.
Again, it's offensive line, it's receiver. We'll see how the transfers without a ton of playing time work out. I think JoJo Schrader is one of them coming over from Miami to NC State. We know CJ Bailey is at least pretty good, and Dave Doran has coached teams that, look, I'm not going to fall for 10-2 Dave Doran again. There's a reason his ceiling has been where it's been. But again, there's a vacuum. If you're asking about an Orange Julius, not quite on the substantial level of a Chili's, but if you're asking about an Orange Julius, if your starting point is experienced quarterback and coach who has won a bunch, I'm okay with NC State there.
I love this new world that we're in now with the ACC. We could probably do a full episode.
The Chili's conference, yeah?
The Chili's, right, where we define them all in an ACC sense, where we compare teams to stores.
I would love to. Look, who's a kiosk? We're like, look, they're not good, but I'll stop by and check out this weird remote control helicopter for a couple minutes.
Probably North Carolina?
Yeah. North Carolina, if their defense, I mean, they lose, I think the linebackers were sort of the heartbeat of that defense last year. But Jordan Shipp, the receiver who's back, I think they could string together at least an intriguing kiosk of a week or two. Sure.
Boston College is a mess.
Yeah.
They're not going to play any defense.
Yeah. And they're banking on a D2 quarterback. They're going with the tie strategy. We'll see how it works out. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even going D2 quarterbacks. I'm all about.
You said FCS. D2 like 3 weeks ago.
No, I said
if you're
FCS.
in charge. No, you said D2 and FCS. You said small school.
Okay. Well, I just learned about Saginaw State, so
yeah.
No, we could do that episode. And if you have suggestions, solidverbal@gmail.com. Let us know what store Pitt is in your book. Would love to hear from you.
What would be Pitt in this situation? Where you kind of know what you're getting in Pitt. We know that there's upside with Mason Heinschel. Again, offensive line and receiver questions. Defense was ahead of the offense last year, I believe. You know what you're getting. I guess with Pat Narduzzi specifically, it could be a Lens Crafters.
A little bit.
They're serving a purpose.
Right.
They're helping to round out the options at this mall.
Yeah.
but you're not excited by a Lens Crafters.
I'm trying to think, who is the fad team?
Or Sunglass Hut.
Who's the fad team in the ACC this year?
I think Cal.
You think Cal? Cal is like a Hollister or something that plays into recent trends.
I think there's flash to Cal, which we haven't been able to say in a long time. But because JKS is, he loves bombing it downfield and taking chances. They've improved offensive skill. They're recruiting well, and they'll continue to recruit well, I think, under Tosh. And they have the weird geographic situation, right, where teams, travel all the way west and they put a scare into them at the very least. Saw a couple of years ago with that Miami game. I think that they would be, in my mind, they're like my... Look, it's not my favorite, but they're fun to look at.
No.
Did you shop at Hollister? American Eagle? Abercrombie?
Back in the day, I did, yeah. I think I bought one of those like puka shell necklaces from Hollister back in the day.
I believe that.
Before going down to Ocean City, Maryland. Yeah.
Okay. You
Clemson, Clemson I don't think is a store. I just think they're a franchise that's been in the same space in the mall for a long time and has never swapped out the wallpaper. It's just starting to show a lot of age.
I think we're looking at both Clemson and Florida State because of how much money they're paying Dabo and Mike Norvell as stores that nobody ever goes to. That you're like, is that a money laundering front of some kind?
Yeah. Is that a front?
Right. They're just selling expensive greeting cards and nobody is going in. Like, they're not sharper images. Sharper images, you just tool around and be like, what is this massager? What is this chair? Whatever.
Yeah.
But they're selling like very strange oil paintings. Nobody's ever in there.
In the mall. Yeah.
Like, it's a lot of like centaurs. Although I think I would go in there.
Yeah. Just to check it out. But you're not going to buy anything. And that's the point.
You're not going to buy anything. But yes, I think combined they're making like $21 million, Mike Norvell and Dabo Swinney this year. So there's Swarovski.
Yeah. I just bought a gift at Swarovski.
Okay, well maybe not. You're classier than I am.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. We're gonna need to unpack this more.
There's your May CC.
solidverbal@gmail.com. Hit us up. Let us know your thoughts on any of what we described here today, be it Tony Petitti and where things seem to be headed for the college football playoff or the ACC, the Chili's conference.
Thank you.
Talk to us about the mall, whatever you're into. Again, solidverbal@gmail.com. Would encourage everybody, go to solidverbal.com/newsletter. That's where you can sign up for the newsletter if you have yet to do so. Tyler's been killing it, man.
Oh, he's doing well.
He's doing such a good job writing about coaches and teams and just interesting nuances that I think warrant consideration and are definitely worthy of your attention. A free newsletter. Give us your email. Again, solidverbal.com/newsletter. You can sign up. The most recent one was on the pairing. We just sent this out on Tuesday between Bill Belichick and his new offensive coordinator, which we did not even discuss here, but Bobby Petrino and Bill Belichick is a very odd couple, to say the least. So go and check that out. We would encourage you to do so. And of course, if you made it all the way through without hitting follow or subscribe, now would be a great time to do that to help us out.
Definitely. For all the goodies that we're giving you.
All the good stuff.
Like this.
I didn't even mention verballers.com.
Verballers.com. There you go.
Tell the fine folks what they can get at verballers.com real quick. I always do it.
Okay, so if you sign up to support us via our Patreon on verballers.com, Ty will make every new subscriber a ham and cheese sandwich. Yes? And it arrives
I think
through
we
the
took
mail.
that out of the $5 tier.
Is that was more of a 2024 thing?
That was more of a 24 thing, yeah.
Okay, so scratch the ham sandwich thing. You said deep tissue massage. Was that what it was?
That was at the $50 tier, I think.
That was the $50. That
was a $50 tier.
For a deep tissue massage from Ty Hildebrand? For $50?
You have to pay for the travel to get me there. But
Ty,
the $50.
This is like the actual language, I think, of sexual professionals. Like, you have to pay for my travel, and then I will give you a massage.
You always say these things when I'm drinking. Don't, like, what? I just have water here. Although maybe it should be something harder with the way you're talking.
I don't know. You're talking about charging for massages and you have to pay for travel. Okay. That's you. No, if you go to verballers.com, you have access to our Discord, which is an incredible college football community of huge college football fans. You have access to our bonus shows that we do every week, all season long, and all year long, off season long as well. The access to the games is great. The pick'em pool all season long. We're adding new games as well. We do a fun game in the wintertime called Bowl Bingo. Like there's just a ton to go through behind the scenes with the community at verballers.com.
I'm going to spin up Grand
Early
Total
access, ad free. I don't know. It seems great.
I'm spinning up Grand Total again, where you go through
Grand
all the
Total's
power
back?
teams and do the over-under. It's a really easy game. So yeah, a lot to look forward to. That's verballers.com. Go and check that out. It's a great way to support what Dan and I do. I already mentioned the newsletter, mentioned follow or subscribe and the ratings and reviews and all that stuff. So we do not need to play that back. Thank you one and all so much for downloading, for supporting what Dan and I do here on the show. We will be back next week in some capacity. We'll keep you posted on that front. But in the meantime, do enjoy your Memorial Day weekend.
Yes.
Wherever it is you find us, wherever it is we find you, as always, you know the drill. Stay solid.
Peace and good luck with your corn, Ty.
I aspire for that corn. I do. I really do.